Absolutely, yeah. Amoghasiddhi. And very timely too that he's popping up just at this stage of the year and the month. I don't know about you, but I was watching the news last night and just feeling really quite spooked, quite rattled, quite a lot of anxiety about all these sudden changes and developments. So it's been really great to be writing and reading and practicing with the Amoghasiddhi. You know, he's been in my meditation. It just noticeably, he's such a powerful force for fearlessness. So a timely thing for all of us. And I hope that this evening will serve by way of a bit of an introduction for those of you who haven't met him before, a reminder for those of us that have, and also a reminder that we can really, really draw on Amoghasiddhi's fearlessness in particular. So of all the Buddhas of the mandala, and we've been around pretty much all apart from this one and then next week Vairochana, you'll be told that Amoghasiddhi is the most mysterious and the most elusive, and perhaps also the most difficult to explain. And that is certainly my experience. But my own way in with all the jinnas is through their colours. As you know, perhaps you remember at the beginning of this session, we did a little bit of exploration of the colours. My way in is the colours and the symbolic features and their emblems and their adornments. So like Akshobhya's deep blue, deep dark blue, and the elephants that kind of support him speak more to me about imperturbability than any kind of 10 pages of explanations or description that I might read, or Ratnasambhava's gold and yellow light and the brilliance of the wish-fulfilling gem just sums up the whole kind of notion of bounty. I don't actually need to read about it to kind of clock it. So I think it's important, I think it's really important for us not to always get lost in a sea of words around the jinnas, but to stay completely open to how they speak to us so clearly at a very symbolic level, if we'll allow ourselves to just get our rational minds out of the way for a few minutes or some time. So it's not that words aren't incredibly important when it comes to getting to know the five Buddhas, but they're only part of it. If we can trust our more instinctive responses, then we can also get to know them that way. So at the beginning here, we're just going to spend a little bit of time just enjoying ourselves and just relaxing, just shutting down our thinking minds. We've all got more than enough to think about. So this next part is just by way of a bit of, playful, really. And I would like you to shut your eyes and relax and just explore with me some of the images and symbols of Amoghasiddhi, the green Buddha of the North, that really work for me, and I think work for many people, in kind of touching into what he's all about. So just take some deep breaths and relax. Shut your eyes, Jane Potter. And then call to mind any memory, any image or idea you have of the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis. I wouldn't mind betting that most of us would give a lot to see them, and perhaps some of us even have. So you may have a strong, you may not have quite such a strong, whatever your imagination, what are the colours that you see? What are the shapes? And the shapes, are they static or are they moving? And can you follow them in your mind's eye? What's the landscape below and around? The mountains or snow or trees? How does it make you feel? And what is happening to the light? I often see folds and ripples, like curtains of the night. But what do you see? Okay, now something else. This time, imagine yourself floating down and down into a lake of deep, dark, iridescent emerald green water. Perfectly warm, perfectly comfortable. There are long tendrils of seaweed flowing past, just like a woman's long hair flowing underwater. And you might be able to look up and see shards of light kind of filtering down from the surface, but you're perfectly relaxed, perfectly safe, and surrounded by this marvelous jade green water light. Just enjoy the sensation of floating in green. And here's another now. This time you're in a pine forest and surrounded by tall, dark, shadowy green fir trees. And it's nighttime and dark. But every so often you glimpse the dark blue sky above and occasionally a star. And you can hear owls hooting in the distance, and sometimes a twig cracks. And the ground is dry and soft underfoot. It's so dark beneath the trees that it occurs to you that it should be creepy, but it's not. You feel perfectly unafraid. It's just beautiful and so quiet. And walking on through the forest, you come to a glade where you're suddenly surrounded by banks of deep, soft, green mosses of every possible kind. And they're vibrant greens of emerald and jade, glowing in the newly risen moonlight. And you just want to touch them and run your fingers through them, and maybe even lie down and sleep on them. They look so inviting. So when Amoghasiddhi appears, you're stunned, but you're not actually frightened, because there's a lot of noise and a lot of movement, and his image is quite unforgettable. He too is dark, dark green, but he's actually made of light, and he's wearing a scarlet robe. And his right hand is raised, palm forward, in the powerful mudra of fearlessness. And in his left hand, resting on his lap, there is a great double vajra, two crossed diamond thunderbolts, the ultimate symbol of power, harmony, balance, and integration. And then you realize that actually he's flying towards you. There's a sound of rushing wind and also something that sounds like cymbals clashing. And you suddenly see that he's in a chariot, and the chariot is drawn by two kind of eagle-like creatures, Garudas, half man, half bird. And each of them holds two cymbals before them and clashes them together with a deafening noise as they fly past. And he shoots across your visual field in a sea of sound and light. And for a few seconds, the whole air itself trembles. Everything is infused with what feels like a kind of unstoppable, wild energy and force. And gradually the air settles and stillness and quiet return. And you shake your head and think, wow, okay. Okay, so come back now. I hope maybe that's got us in touch with a little bit of what Amoghasiddhi feels like. And if you went with the flow of that little exercise, then I hope you have touched into that sense. But if you felt a lot of resistance and you can't get into that sort of stuff, that too is absolutely fine. But the lesson to take here is that we not only can, but we should engage with these mythic figures, these mythic symbolic figures with our imaginations. And that when we do that, we can really let ourselves go a bit and trust our instincts to sort of take us places. We can learn intuitively and subconsciously, as well as by reading and listening and studying. We can play and relax and trust whatever comes up. And don't dismiss anything that comes up if you set your mind to contemplating one of the Buddhas. Any thought or idea, get a bit more in touch with our depths. And if not much happens, it's okay. It's very important not to force and not to have a view about what should be happening, but at least to make space for something perhaps to arise. And then if Amoghasiddhi joins you when you next go out walking in the forest and he wants to chat, well, that's just great, isn't it? Anyway, now some words. Amoghasiddhi, the all-accomplishing Buddha of fearlessness and unobstructed success. So firstly, back to fearlessness, this whole subject of fearlessness, which I talked about at the beginning. That was definitely what attracted me to Amoghasiddhi at first. And at times of high anxiety or even moderate anxiety and stress, I have very, very often found myself in meditation making that mudra of fearlessness, which if you look at me on the screen for a moment, is like so. It's, I mean, I like doing it like that, or sometimes it's like so. His hands palm up and facing out. That's it. Just make it. Make the mudra, yeah. Or refine it a little bit, whichever. I've so often found myself doing this. It's oddly powerful and very reassuring. It's like it says, no more. It says, far enough, can't touch me. Be banished, fear. So it's something to use. And this fearlessness is, of course, derived from his ultimate insight into reality. He's an enlightened being. Everything is kind of rolling off him. He's sort of like Velcro man. There is no attachment, no clinging, and no self. So there is nothing to fear, to attach to. There is no fear of pain. There is no fear of loss. There is no fear of death. They're all banished because there is no ego to hurt or to lose or to die. And the double Vajra reminds us that fearlessness, to cultivate fearlessness, it must come from a very full and balanced development of all sides of us, not just one side. That means sides bright and dark, attractive and unattractive. And we will, you know, Amoghasiddhi is the Buddha of shadows. We will need to go deep sometimes, and we will need to even go into darkness. We have to bring in all of us in order to achieve that stability that the double Vajra represents, that unification and reconciliation of opposites and the diversity of our natures that leads to integration and frees us in order to move forward. I mean, Vasantra, whose book several of us have been, you know, drawing on heavily for these talks, which is so brilliant on these Buddhas, he reminds us that it's very easy to concentrate on your strengths and even to become totally identified with one of them, or perhaps even a few. But he says, if you want to defend a castle, you won't just build one bit of wall. You know, you won't build one wall at the front. You'll want walls at the side and the back. You're not going to leave the rest exposed and vulnerable. You'll want it to go right round. That's a great image. So that's a little bit on fearlessness. I'll come back to it a bit later. Amoghasiddhi is also the Buddha of spontaneous action and unobstructed success. And I used to wonder, what on earth is that? What is unobstructed success? What does that mean? And I think here it's actually helpful to go back to symbolism. Amoghasiddhi's energy is completely free and full of movement, and it can move in any direction, forward, backwards, but anywhere, or even all directions at once. And that's why his element is the air. That's why you've got this this notion of the wind and rushing, and he's associated with movement and with sound, the cymbals clashing. And his energy is not blocked or obstructed in any way. Because it's emanating from a place of enlightenment, all his activity is completely spontaneous and compassionate and always for the benefit of other beings. So it's like just a spring, a fund of spontaneous compassion and energy. And so Amoghasiddhi is also associated with karma, or volition, the will to act. So you'll remember that volitions create our karma, and in samsara, we're constantly moving towards some things and pushing others away. And all this movement produces consequences. Each of us effectively creates our world through the play and the interplay of our volitions, our willed acts, what we want, what we don't want, what we pull towards us, what we push away from us. And then these actions become our samskaras, our habits. But if we're to become enlightened, then we have to stop the arising of these volitions. As long as we are still emotionally entangled with the world and trying to force situations to continue or disappear according to our perceived wants or needs, then our relationship with it will continue and we won't be free. We'll be stuck in that continuum. But the enlightened person produces no such volitions. He leaves no trace. You remember that the Buddha is called the trackless one. And that, of course, is what it means. Leaves no trace. It's like those stories of Indians who leave no trace. It's very magical and mysterious, that. And the Vasantra is also extraordinarily good on this. I'm just going to, why reinvent the wheel? He's much better than me. He's extraordinarily good on this. He says, if you were given 100 gold bars, you would probably be elated. If somebody were to hit you, you might be angry or afraid. However, if, when these things happened, you knew that you were dreaming, you would no longer be affected by them. Is my bird clock going off again? I can see your smile. If you knew you were dreaming, you would no longer be affected by them. Knowing the true nature of the situation, you could give away the gold or let yourself be hit with perfect equanimity. I can't imagine it, but if it was an enlightened person, well, you hear about those, incredible people who allowed themselves to be burned. The Buddhist monks. Knowing the true nature of the situation, yes. So the enlightened person acts, but without any egotistical volition. They're dwelling in a state of perfect equanimity. So their actions create no new karma. They're free of it now. So the enlightened consciousness symbolized by Amoghasiddhi is freed of all hindrance and becomes unobstructed and unstoppable. All his action is compassionate and spontaneous, and this unpremeditated altruism, because of this, he's known as the all-accomplishing. The spiritual poison, or the opposites, which he transmutes, is actually envy. You remember, I hope, maybe, that all the jhanas are associated with a particular poison or a klesha, something that holds us back. And Amoghasiddhi's particular poison is envy. And envy is a kind of pernicious mix of craving and hatred. So envy is always looking outside for satisfaction. But Amoghasiddhi teaches us to mobilize our own resources and look within, you know. So like, for example, in terms of self-metta, we could say that if we didn't look so much to other people for love, then we'd have all that energy to love ourselves much more. So Amoghasiddhi transmutes envy into equanimity. And I'm going to conclude by sharing a memory with you of a moment when Amoghasiddhi really manifested in my life as a very powerful and a very loving force. I'm going to ask Satchalila and Pranyamati to help me. And this was when I was teaching meditation at the men's prison around the corner. And this was, I often talk about this in my talks. It was a time in my life when I had so many fascinating experiences and I learned so much. And I felt so fortunate to be able to bring the Dharma there. And I was teaching the guys this mantra. And the mantra is very powerful and very rhythmic and very beautiful. And it can actually be sung in a round, in a sort of two-part round. So Satchalila and I talked about how we could demonstrate this, and we were a bit worried about doing it across Zoom. So Pranyamati has very kindly offered to help Satchalila just demonstrate this mantra. Now, some of you, many of us will have heard it, but for those of us who haven't, this will sort of give you a flavour of what this mantra is about.
Amoghasiddhi aham. Amoghasiddhi aham. Amoghasiddhi aham. Amoghasiddhi aham. Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham.
Amoghasiddhi aham. Amoghasiddhi aham.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's brilliant. So I hope you can hear just what, I mean, even just hearing two people chanting it, when you sort of settle into it, it's incredibly powerful. When it's done in a shrine room, it's incredibly powerful. But what happened on this occasion was that I was with about 6 men, and we were in the chapel, which is actually next to the exercise yard. So teaching any kind of meditation in the prison was always very challenging because there's so much noise, you know, going on. So they were practicing this mantra and beginning to really get into it, and they really like the sort of rhythmic, energetic regularity of it. And there's, you know, there's doors banging, there's guys talking loudly in the exercise yard, there's people shouting, there's just all the kerfuffle, vehicles moving around, all sorts of stuff, you know, all in the background. Anyway, they really, really got into it. And, you know, it was one of those magical moments where palpably the whole atmosphere just changed. Something happened, and all of us just went quite deep with it and quite quickly. And we probably chanted, I don't know, we probably chanted it for 5-10 minutes or something. I hadn't taught them it before, and they even followed my lead when I got quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter. It was so impressive. They did it so beautifully. And then we stopped, we came to silence, and there was just complete silence. all the noise around us had stopped. The doors had stopped banging. The guys outside in the exercise yard had stopped and were listening. And it probably wasn't very long, but just for a few seconds, you just got this really, really strong sense of presence. And with it, fearlessness, you know. And of course, prison is a place where there's an enormous amount of fear. I just remember it as an incredibly moving moment, and one in which I really felt that Amoghasiddhi was very, very present. So that the mantra and the mudra, I think, are powerful things to use when we're in states of anxiety and stress. Yeah, we can go there. It's another tool. So that's all I want to say. But I just want, in the last few minutes before we have a break, to lead us back in another little reflection. So a little more quiet time. I want us to sort of think a little bit about what this whole thing about unobstructed success, which is related to fear, of course, what blocks us, anything that blocks us in our practice, in our going forward. So anything that's holding us back, sticky stuff. I'll give you some examples and then I'll take us through a little reflection. So it could be your views about, our views about ourselves, things like, you know, I don't belong, I can't meditate, other people can meditate, but I don't seem to be doing it right. I'm too shy, I'm too overconfident, I'm too this, I'm too that. I'm not a good person. I feel ill all the time. I must be sick. I don't seem to have much energy. You know, stuff like this, stuff that we think about ourselves. It could be a person or people or a situation which arouses negative feelings in you and you just can't get past. You know, something with the family, something with work, something in the Sangha. It could be something in your past. I think perhaps just, you know, put strong trauma aside for the moment. Don't go back there. But if you have it, but something else, it could be a rift, a sadness, something that was done or not done, said or unsaid, or unsaid, a regret, but something that's stuck in some way and is still around. Could even be, for many of us, it might well be a fear about the future, a sort of a view that's getting embedded that, you know, things will get worse, this will not pass, there won't be enough, I won't be able to cope, you know, what could be that. So again, just lean back, take a couple of deep breaths, big, long, deep breaths, longer on the out breath, shorter on the in breath, longer on the out breath. Just let go. Long out breath will help us really relax. And giving up your weight to gravity, noticing the points of contact on the floor, below your feet, on the chair, the cushions below your sitting bones. Moving through your body with a kindly awareness. And perhaps taking a moment to find where your awareness is at the moment. Where does it seem to be centered or seated? Is it perhaps behind the eyes, in the forehead, lower down maybe, in the head? Maybe in the body possibly? But wherever it is, just holding it very gently, moving it down, 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 down through the throat, chest and past the heart and the stomach. And taking your awareness down into the lower abdomen. And imagining it there set low and strong and grounded. So your body is like a mountain. And the heart is like an ocean and the mind is like the sky. Let the head and the thoughts just quieten. Imagine your thoughts swept away by big, cleansing waves of cool green seawater. And now, if you've quietened a little, if there's a little space, if you can, bring to mind something or things that hold you back in any way. I'm going to just be quiet for a few minutes. Now, what might it possibly feel like, do you think, if this was no longer happening? If you no longer felt this way? If this stuckness, which causes you pain or discomfort or disappointment, if it was gone, what would it be like to be free of it? How do you think you would be? What do you think you might do? Imagining ourselves free and full of energy and unobstructed. And now if you come back and open your eyes, And I've put up a shot, a really gorgeous shot of the Northern Lights here. And that's the kind of energy, that's the kind of movement. I just think that's so fab, isn't it? Let me just take a moment to enjoy it. And so mysterious. And here, finally, is Kumadas lovely Amoghasiddhi with the Fearlessness Mudra and with the double Vajra, Vishva Vajra. And I love the way that Kumada has just suggested forest or something mysterious behind him, and then little acorns. And of course, above him, these are Shang Shang birds, Garuda Shang Shang birds, with the symbols. You'll often see Amoghasiddhi presented with a chariot and in a much more sort of moving posture than this. This is actually quite settled. It is rather beautiful, and it does kind of evoke unobstructedness, I think. I'll put that one back while we go and have a 5-minute break. So back here again at 25 past, if that's okay. And then Satchalila will put us in groups, and we'll have about half an hour to share. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.